cabin in the woods. Music, alcohol, no parents, just a group of friends celebrating the end of the year. There were 8 of us. By the time we arrived at the cabin, it was already dark. The place was deep in the forest, miles from the nearest town. No cell signal, no neighbors, just trees in every direction. That should have been the first warning. We lit a fire outside, turned on the music, and started drinking. Someone joked that it felt like the beginning of a horror movie. We laughed. Around 11:20 p.m., I noticed someone standing at the edge of the trees. At first, I thought it was one of us messing around, but the figure didn't move, didn't wave, didn't come closer. Just stood there. I pointed it out to the others, but when they looked, the figure was gone. Probably a hunter, someone said. I didn't believe that. At 11:40, the power inside the cabin went out. The music stopped. The lights died. The cabin fell silent. We turned on our phone flashlights, laughing nervously, pretending it wasn't a big deal. That's when we heard the knocking. It came from the front door. Slow, heavy, intentional. 3 knocks. No one spoke. One of my friends finally called out, "Hello?" No answer. The knocking started again, harder this time. We backed away from the door. Then it opened. He stood there wearing dark clothes, his face pale and expressionless. He didn't say a word. He didn't ask for help. He just stepped inside. What happened next still feels unreal. He moved fast. Too fast. Screaming filled the cabin. Someone tried to run. Someone else fell. I remember slipping on the floor and crawling toward the back hallway as everything turned into chaos. I locked myself in a storage room, holding my breath as the sounds echoed through the cabin, shouting, crying. Then, silence. One by one, the lights from my friends' phones went dark. I stayed hidden until I heard the front door open again. Then footsteps. Leaving. I waited. Minutes passed. Maybe hours. When I finally opened the door, the cabin was empty. Everyone was gone. No one answered when I called their names. I ran. I didn't stop running until I hit the road and flagged down a car just after midnight. The police went back with me at sunrise. They found the cabin. They found blood. But they didn't find my friends. No bodies, no signs of where they were taken. The case was eventually closed. Animal attack, they said. Panic. Confusion. But here's what I've never told anyone. As I was running through the woods that night, I looked back once, and I saw him standing between the trees, watching, smiling, waiting for the next year to begin. New Year's Eve has always been loud. Fireworks, music, people counting down together. That's why what happened that night still doesn't make sense to me. I was 22, living alone in a small apartment on the edge of the city. I didn't feel like going out, so I stayed home, planning to watch the countdown on TV and fall asleep right after midnight. By 11:30, the streets outside were already noisy. I could hear distant fireworks and people laughing somewhere below my window. Everything felt normal. At 11:57 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. It just said, "Don't answer the door." I frowned, assuming it was a prank. Wrong number, maybe. I ignored it and turned my attention back to the TV. 11:58 p.m. Another vibration. I'm serious. That's when I felt uncomfortable. I checked the peephole out of instinct, even though I hadn't heard a knock. The hallway outside my apartment was empty, no movement, no sound. I locked the deadbolt anyway. 11:59 p.m. The TV volume lowered as the crowd on the screen began the countdown. 10, 9, 8. My phone buzzed again. It's already in the building. My heart skipped. I typed back, "Who is this?" The reply came instantly. "Someone who answered the door last year. 7-6. A knock echoed through my apartment. It wasn't loud, it wasn't aggressive. Just 3 slow knocks, 5-4. I stood frozen, staring at the door. Another knock, 3-2. My phone buzzed one last time. If you hear the countdown outside your door, don't move. 1. The city outside exploded with noise, fireworks, shouting, cheering, "Happy New Year." And then I heard it. Not from the TV, not from the street, from right outside my apartment door, a voice, soft, calm, counting. 10, 9, 8. My blood ran cold. It wasn't one voice, it was many layered together, whispering in perfect unison. I backed away slowly, every instinct screaming at me to run, but my legs felt weak. The counting continued, steady and patient. 5, 4. My doorknob began to turn, not violently, not forcefully, just slowly, testing the lock. 3, 2. The whisper stopped. Silence. I stood there for what felt like forever, barely breathing. Then my phone vibrated again. "You didn't answer." "Good." I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, police cars filled the street. Someone in my building, an older man down the hall, had been found dead inside his apartment. His front door was wide open. The police said there were no signs of a struggle, no forced entry, no explanation. When they left, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. On my door, carved lightly into the wood near the handle, were faint scratch marks, and beneath them, barely visible, a message. "See you next year." I moved out 2 days later. But every New Year's Eve, just before midnight, I turn my phone off, I lock every door, and I listen very carefully, because sometimes beneath the fireworks, I can still hear the counting. New Year's Eve is supposed to be about starting over, leaving things behind, counting down to something new. But that night, something else was counting too. I was spending New Year's Eve at my grandmother's house in a small town. She lived alone, far from the city, where the streets go quiet long before midnight. I didn't want her to be alone on the holiday, so I stayed over. The house was old, really old. The kind where the floors creak even when no one's walking and every room feels like it's holding on to memories it shouldn't. By 11:45 p.m., my grandmother had already gone to bed. She always did. I stayed in the living room, watching the countdown on TV, the volume low so I wouldn't wake her. Outside, there were no fireworks, no voices, just wind brushing against the windows. At 11:50, the power went out. The TV shut off. The lights died. The house dropped into complete darkness. At first, I thought it was normal. Old wiring, bad weather. I turned on my phone flashlight and told myself it would come back on before midnight. That's when I heard the grandfather clock in the hallway. It wasn't supposed to work anymore. It hadn't ticked in years, but now it was ticking. Slow, loud, 1 second at a time. I stood up and shined my phone down the hallway. The clock was there, just as always, but the hands were moving. 11:55. My stomach tightened. I went to unplug it, something my grandmother had done years ago. But when I reached behind it, there was no cord. None. The ticking didn't stop. 11:57. From somewhere else in the house, I heard whispering. At first, it sounded like the TV crowd, the kind you hear during a countdown. Faint, distant, overlapping voices. But the TV was off. And the voices weren't coming from the living room. They were coming from upstairs. 11:58, I froze at the bottom of the stairs, listening. The whispering grew clearer. They were counting, not loudly, not excited, just calmly. 10, 9, I whispered. "Hello?" No answer. 8, 7. I felt a pressure in my chest, like the air had thickened. Every instinct told me not to go upstairs. But I did. Halfway up the stairs, my phone flashlight flickered. 6, 5. The hallway at the top was dark, except for a faint glow coming from the guest room, the room I was supposed to be sleeping in. 4. The door was open. 3. I stepped closer and looked inside. The room was empty, no furniture, no bed, no decorations, just darkness. 2. The whispering stopped. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then, right next to my ear, a voice whispered, "Happy New Year." I ran. I didn't look back. I ran down the stairs, out the front door, and into the freezing night. I didn't stop until I reached my car. I stayed there until morning. When my grandmother woke up, I told her everything. She didn't look surprised. She just said quietly, "That's why we don't count down in this house." I asked her what she meant. She told me that years ago, on New Year's Eve, her sister had gone upstairs during the countdown. She never came back down. The house went silent after that. The clock stopped. And every year since, something waits for midnight. I never spent another New Year's Eve there. But sometimes, when the year is about to change, I swear I can hear whispering, counting,